It is on. Just 2 weeks before the first votes, the bromance between the two Republican frontrunners is history. The clashes of this week's debate continued on the stump this weekend. After Cruz attacked Trump's New York values, Donald seemed to score with a powerful defense of his hometown. But Cruz now countering with this video.
I'm very pro-choice. I hate the concept of abortion. I hate it. Still, I just believe in choice. And again, it may be a little bit of a New York background because there is some different attitude in different parts of the country. And, you know, I was raised in New York and grew up and work and everything else in New York City.
And here was Cruz in South Carolina.
I recognize that what Donald says on the campaign trail today is fairly conservative. But voters are far more discerning. They've learned over and over again politicians don't tell us the truth.
Big numbers.
So Trump was loaded for bear when I met up with him in New Hampshire on Saturday, and we began with the news breaking just as we sat down, the release of those American prisoners from Iran. So we have some news of 4 American hostages, including Jason Rezaian, released by Iran. Now, you said that was never going to happen. You blamed Obama. Ready to give him credit?
Absolutely not. And I never said it was never going to happen. I said that if I got in, it would happen immediately. Now, I have to see the deal. Somebody said they got 7, we give 4, you know, in terms of what the deal is. I have to see what the deal is. This should have happened years ago, George. We're giving them $150 billion. This shouldn't be happening now. And I understand that in addition to the $150 billion, they're getting hostages also, or they're getting some prisoners released. So I have to see what the deal is. Don't forget, we're taping this a little bit early. And it's not Sunday morning, like your viewers probably think. So I have to see what the deal is. This should have happened years ago.
Let's talk about the race. Is it now a two-person race between you and Ted Cruz?
No, I don't think so. I think there are other people, but I don't think a lot of people have a great chance. I don't think Ted Cruz has a great chance, to be honest with you.
He has doubled down on this issue of New York values. He lumped you in yesterday with Hillary Clinton, Andrew Cuomo, Bill de Blasio, and said he apologizes to the millions of New Yorkers let down by liberal politicians.
Look, the truth is he's a nasty guy. He was so nice to me. I mean, I knew it. I was watching. I kept saying, come on, Ted, let's go, kid. But he's a nasty guy. Nobody likes him. Nobody in Congress likes him. Nobody likes him anywhere once they get to know him. He's a very, he's got an edge that's not good. You can't make deals with people like that, and it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing for the country. Very nasty guy.
He's also circulating that clip of you on Tim Russert in 1999 where you said, I lived in New York City and Manhattan all my life, okay? So you know my views are a little bit different than if I lived in Iowa. So those were your words.
Yeah. A long time ago, and just so you understand, he's taking money from people that are very much into the whole gay marriage situation, and he's taking money from them, and he's, you know, raising funds from them. Then he got caught the other day in a tape when he was raising funds at a law office talking about things that are priorities and not priorities.
So
this was not a priority. Oh, he's a total hypocrite. How about his fundraising, and how about when he does his personal financial disclosure form and he doesn't put on that he's borrowing money from Goldman Sachs, and then today it comes out that he's also borrowing money from Citibank, and he doesn't list it. You know why? He wants to look like Robin Hood, that he's the one protecting the people from the banks. Well, he's actually borrowing money and personally guaranteeing it and not disclosing it, which is illegal.
But how about you? Those were your words. You were talking about in that interview issues like gay marriage, talking about how you were strongly pro-choice. And it was your comparison of New York values and Iowa views. And it's led a lot of conservatives to think, boy, maybe he's going to switch again. He's not going to be with us.
It doesn't matter what they think. It doesn't matter. They understand me. They understand trade. I don't consider myself to be anything. You know, when they ask labels, we're talking about labels. I consider myself to be right now somebody that...
So you're not a conservative?
I'm conservative, but when it comes to different elements of what I believe in, that's what people really understand. I'm going to solve our trade problem. I'm going to solve our military problem. I'm going to get rid of ISIS. I'm going to create borders. I'm going to do the things that this is what they want.
But they're afraid you're going to abandon conservative issues if you get
I don't think too many people are afraid of that, okay? Because if you look at the polls, I'm leading Ted Cruz by a lot. He even lied about that. You know, he got up and said, well, the polls are showing that I'm the one that's on the upswing. He's the one on the downswing, a big downswing. But when you look at what he said, and when you look at the way he said it and the scorn toward New York, I thought it was a disgrace in light of the World Trade Center, in light of all the people that died. And think about the firemen that went up those buildings and they were killed instantaneously. And they probably pretty much knew those buildings were coming down, and they're going up to save lives. And by the way, speaking of Iowa, which I love, and I'm leading in the polls right now in Iowa, by the way, but I love, We had firemen from Iowa, which was so beautiful, and other places, many other places, coming to the World Trade Center to help. You had people from Iowa, in particular the fire department, coming all the way from Iowa to help with the World Trade Center. And here's Ted Cruz putting down that and the great, the great people of New York. No, he's putting down the great people of New York. But hey, you've been there. Who could have done, very few people could have done what New Yorkers did under that unbelievable circumstance.
Let's talk about some of the issues. Judges. What kind of judges will you appoint? Will they be conservative? What does that mean to you? And how will you ensure it?
Well, first of all, we have a lot of judges that have to be appointed because we have a lot of openings in terms of judges. And I'm very happy about that, to be honest, because I think, appointing judges is a very important and frankly, a very, very important element of what we're doing.
Ted Cruz says he's going to appoint rock-ribbed conservatives with a paper trail. What are you going to do?
Well, I'm going to appoint conservative judges. I'm going to appoint people that have great reputations, that are great with the legal profession.
Like?
But I want, I could say a judge who is a totally underrated and not spoken is Justice Thomas. I mean, if you look at some of the judges that we have, like on the Supreme Court, Justice Roberts turned out to be a nightmare for conservatives. I mean, they're going to appoint.
So how are you going to
by the way,
let me just tell you something. What's going to be your criteria?
Ted Cruz was the one that really wanted Justice Roberts to go on the Supreme Court. You know that, right? Have you heard that?
I heard he worked with Roberts.
Let me just say, he was pushing him hard. Justice Roberts gave us Obamacare. Obamacare would have been terminated twice if it weren't for Justice Roberts. First time 100%, second time 90% that would have died of its own weight. But Justice Roberts could have killed Obamacare and should have, based on everything, should have killed it twice. Ted Cruz is the one that was promoting him. Ted Cruz and also Jeb Bush. But Justice Roberts was the man that gave us, and remember it, he gave us Obamacare almost as much as Obama himself.
A lot of conservatives skeptical of you. They look at the Kelo decision, say you support taking private property away, giving it to real estate developers. They're worried about that.
Let me tell you about that decision. You're talking about eminent domain. Without that, you wouldn't have roads. We wouldn't have been able to get here this morning. You wouldn't have roads. You wouldn't have highways. You wouldn't have schools. You wouldn't have hospitals. You wouldn't have anything. You have to use eminent domain. The pipeline, the Keystone Pipeline, they have pages devoted to eminent domain. Now, every conservative, and I'm a conservative, every conservative wants the Keystone Pipeline. Would you say essentially? The Keystone Pipeline cannot be built without eminent domain. That's what you're talking about. Without eminent domain, you wouldn't have 25 feet of the Keystone Pipeline. Eminent domain, you need eminent domain. I'm not in love with it, but you need it. You wouldn't have roads, you wouldn't have anything without eminent domain. So when people criticize me on that, and once people understand what it is, a lot of people say, oh, eminent domain, they don't know what it is. But without that power, you wouldn't have the kind of things that you need to survive as a society and as a country.
So how are you going to make sure you don't get a Justice Roberts? Are you going to ask your appointees?
Excuse me. How are they going to make sure? Bush appointed him, and Cruz was the biggest advocate. Cruz fought like hell to get Justice Roberts in there. Justice Roberts turned out to be an absolute disaster. He turned out to be an absolute disaster because he gave us Obamacare. So you tell me, ask Cruz, why did he push?
I'm asking you.
I'm asking you. Why did he push so hard to have a judge who has absolutely set the conservative movement back and said everything else?
When I interview him, I'll ask him. I want to know how you're going to make sure you don't get betrayed by your appointees.
I will study it carefully. I will work with people that I respect, conservative people, and will appoint judges that will be good. And I don't think I'll have any catastrophic appointment like Justice Roberts, which was really, more than anybody else, pushed by Cruz and Bush.
Let's talk about immigration. Senator Cruz has come out against your deportation force. He said, I'm not going to send jackboots to knock on every door in America. Governor Christie has said this would require a 50% increase in the arrest rate. President Obama says it's going to cost hundreds of billions of dollars. Well, your response?
Senator Cruz is very weak on illegal immigration. He only got strong over the last little while. In fact, the other day I heard him say he wants to build a wall. Where has that been? All of a sudden he wants to build a wall. We are going to create and have a country again. That's what we want. We want to have borders. To have a country, you have to have borders. We don't have borders right now. We have people flowing over freely over the border, like it's nothing, flowing over freely.
How are you going to build the force? How are you going to pay for it?
Excuse me, George. Having babies on our land that we take care of called anchor babies, which, by the way, everyone said you need a new amendment. You don't need. You need a new constitutional amendment. You don't. You need probably just a vote of Congress, and you might not even be that. And I said that from the beginning. And I'm right, the legal scholars, the real legal scholars, the legal scholars that say, as an example, that Cruz has a real problem with his place of birth. And there are many people that are saying that right now. In fact, since I spoke to you the last time, he's been sued. And I told you he'd get sued.
But you know, the person who sued him probably doesn't have standing. A lot of legal scholars...
There'll be a lot of people that sue him that do have standing.
You say you have standing. Why don't you file the suit?
That's an interesting case. Wow. That sounds like a very good case. I do the public a big favor.
So are you going to do it?
You know, it's so interesting with Ted. He was so nice to me, and I kept saying, he's not a nice guy. You know, he was nice. He wanted to go in the wake, right? So I said, so nice, so nice, so nice. I said, when is it going to happen? Well, it happened during the debate because he lied about the polls, because I was going up. In fact, that same day, as you know, Wall Street Journal, NBC came out with a poll, and the headline, Trump way up, him way down, and yet he lied about that. So it's just, I find it very interesting, but it's going to be an interesting race. But I don't think, listen, let me just say, I don't think he's going to do very well.
He said you should put your money where your mouth is. If you really believe in this, you should file the suit.
Well, it's a good idea. Maybe I'll talk to them about that. I'd like to talk to Ted about that. Let's see how he'd feel about it. Because you know, when I file suits, I file real suits. Okay.
You were really unloading on him today. Let's talk about that.
No, I'm unloading because he's been very dishonest. He has a personal financial disclosure form where he didn't put down the banks, and yet he criticizes the banks, and he's going to be Robin Hood, and he's going to take care of the banks. He didn't want the public to see that he went out and borrowed money from Goldman Sachs. Then 2 days later, it came out it wasn't only Goldman Sachs, it was also Citibank. He didn't want the government to, he doesn't want the public to see that. The reason is because he wants the public to think that he's this wonderful guy that's protecting them from the bad, vicious bankers. Well, he borrows money from the banks and got them at a very good rate, and he's got personal guarantees. And why that's not down in his personal financial disclosure. He said, oh, he made a paper mistake. Oh, really? So he made the mistake with Goldman Sachs. But now it comes out 2 days later, he also made the mistake with Citibank. How many other banks does he borrow from? It'd be very interesting. You know what? I have 100 pages, almost 100 pages, talking about billions and billions of dollars. I didn't make a mistake. And they've gone through by everybody. I didn't make a mistake. He's got a couple of pages with a couple of loans, and he forgets the main banks, 2 banks he's got, and he can't put that down. That wasn't a mistake. He knew that those banks were there.
Let's talk about national security. Rubio versus Cruz on national security. Rubio says this USA Freedom Act, which Ted Cruz supported, could have been written by lobbyists for ISIS. Cruz says it's the best way to both protect national security and protect privacy. Who's right?
Well, let me just tell you something. I come very much down on security. You know, we have a whole thing now going on about whether or not we want to protect our freedoms and all. I mean, to me, security is freedom. I am on the side of security, and I've been there from day one. If somebody's listening to my calls, I'm not going to like it, and maybe I'll sue, and I have a right to sue. But when it comes to me personally, I would rather have that. I want security.
So you're saying Rubio's right?
Well, I would go with the Rubio side, yeah, on that.
It does sound like you're a little worried about Cruz now. You're coming down so
No,
hard
I come down on anybody. I come down on anybody that doesn't tell the truth. He didn't tell the truth during the debate. He didn't tell the truth about New York City. I mean, New York City is very few places on earth could have done and suffered the way they suffered. Remember this, George. That was the greatest attack in the history of our country, greater than Pearl Harbor, because Pearl Harbor, they attacked the military. Here, they attacked civilians. And these 2 massive buildings came down on top of the rest of the city, thousands of people killed. And an hour later, we started the process. Great people started the process. People coming in, firemen coming in from Queens, knowing they may die because they want to run up those buildings. They all died, okay? And we have this guy who falsifies his personal financial forms. We have this guy criticizing.
Your rise season has caught the attention of Mike Bloomberg. He's pulled a 3-way race with you and Hillary in it. Sources say that it would show a very competitive race. Does that worry you?
I would love to have Michael join the race. First of all, he's a friend of mine. He's a great guy. I'd love to, because he would be, I think, take a lot of votes away from Hillary. If it's going to be Hillary, I mean, I'm looking now. Is it going to be Hillary? You tell me. She's your friend. I mean, she's like your best friend.
She went to your wedding.
Okay. That's interesting. But, well, she had to, though. You know why? Because I contribute. And she probably went to your wedding, too, because you contribute.
She didn't go to my wedding.
She didn't go to your wedding? That's surprising. So here's the story. I would say if Michael came in, he would take a lot of votes away from Hillary.
Final question.
You know why? One of the reasons. Guns. Michael is very much anti-gun. I am very pro-Second
So you'd
Amendment.
welcome him in the race if you get the nomination?
I would love to have him in the race. I mean, I don't think it's going to happen, but I would love to have him in the race. It's very late for anybody to join the race right now. I mean, I know the filing requirements, and for anybody to come in right now, it's very late.
Letter in the Boston Globe yesterday from a woman named Rebecca O'Donnell, who has a 9-year-old son, paying attention to the race. And he asked her, he's adopted internationally, different ethnicity than his parents. And he asked her if he and his brother would be taken away from us if Donald Trump became president. She went on to write this in the Globe. My son feels that Trump is speaking hate against him because his skin is brown and he is afraid. Trump claims that he will strike fear into the hearts of our enemies. Instead, he strikes fear into the hearts of our children. What do you say to Rebecca?
Well, I'd like to ask you, I'll turn it around. Why don't you pick out a positive letter? Because we're getting so many positive letters. People want to take back their country. That young man will be fine, okay? But people want to take back their country. We want to do it in a humane way, but we have to have a country. We don't have a country right now. We have people pouring in. They're pouring in. And they're doing tremendous damage. If you look at the crime, if you look at the economy, you know, the real number in terms of unemployment, the real number, a number where people that really want jobs, if you look at the real number, it's over 20%, could be as high as 25%, okay? Because people look for jobs, they give up, and they're statistically considered employed. The real number is a disaster. And if you think that 25,000 people come to my rallies because we're doing well, the reason they're coming to my rallies is because the country is doing poorly. And that includes the economy, and obviously now you're seeing the final telltale shock, the stock market. Look what's happening with the stock market.
Final question. Martin Luther King Day this week. What do you say to Americans, African Americans especially, who believe his dream has not been achieved in this country?
Oh, I agree with them, and especially under President Obama. We have an African American president, and the black youth, the African American youth, has essentially almost never done worse. You look at the unemployment in the 50s. You look at African American people that are 30 and 35 and 40 in the height of their strength and lives, and they're doing horribly. President Obama, an African American, has done a terrible job for African Americans. Donald Trump will do a great job for African Americans. I'll bring back jobs to this country from China and many other places, and I'll let people work and make a great living. I will be great for African Americans.